now that the elections are behind us, this phase of the election, what happens next? How do we stay engaged? How do we influence outcomes? How do we translate our voice into everyday power? Right? That is what my conversation today will be about. And I want to start by reminding us, uh, um, beyond we get enamored by the national federal elections, the presidency. That's always a bigger deal when it happens. Uh, but local government actually directly impacts our communities a lot more. Talking about housing, schools, transportation, business permits, community safety. These are local governments has more impact on these things more than the federal government, right? Local elections, they often get less attention. If you look at the numbers versus the federal elections, the government, the presidency, the governorship elections, the numbers were wild compared to the numbers for local elections, and that's always how it's been. But these are the ones that actually matter that we need to be more engaged and we need to pay more attention to. The people we elect, they make key decisions about our neighborhoods, right? About our schools, and so not showing up or not being involved is actually more consequential, right? So now that the election is over, we have to ask, how do we keep our voice working for us? How do we keep everything, how do we make sure that we don't, the momentum, whatever that momentum we've built, doesn't just dissipate and uh, we go back into business as usual, right? What happens next? Okay, so I want to break this down into very actionable pieces for us so that we can have clear direction, clear directives on what needs to be going on. We need to be talking about this with our friends, with our peers, with our colleagues, with our household, with our communities, right? Uh, um, Starts with monitoring and holding elected officials accountable, right? I want to encourage everyone to track how your newly elected or re-elected officials are performing. Pay attention to their performance. What are their campaign promises versus what they are doing? Attend your local council and school board meetings, right? Review the minutes and ask questions. It is your right as a citizen, as a resident. You have the right to ask questions during those meetings. It's something. Yeah, and I know it's even for me. It's been a transition mentally to learn to get involved because we don't come from a lot of us don't come from a place of transparency in government. Or accountability, holding elected officials accountable. It's not something that, if you grew up in most African countries, it's not something that was the norm. And so it's a mindset shift that we have to have. Um, because we're in a different system now. We're trying to create a better system. We're trying to be a part of building something that works for us, and we're part of this. If this country does well, we do well. And so we want to be part of contributing to its growth and development, and show responsibility. But that's part of our responsibility as citizens, right? So your job doesn't stop at the ballot box, for people who are eligible to vote and did vote, right? It doesn't stop there. It needs to be continuing to follow up the people you have elected, making sure that they are staying true to their electoral or their campaign promises, making sure that their performance is up to par. Attend those council meetings, those school board meetings, and you know. Ask relevant questions. You have the right to ask questions. Number two, stay connected and stay engaged. Right, join community groups, join advocacy organizations, right? I feel like the African Immigrant Collective is really we're leaning heavily into this our pillar of advocacy. Uh, if and I encourage everybody who wants to be a part of this to come on board. And there are other advocacy organizations. Get yourself involved, get yourself plugged in, and begin to volunteer, so that we can keep these issues, keep these conversations alive. Use your digital presence, use digital platforms uh, to stay up to date, right? Stay up to date with what's going on. Attend local meetings, stay up to date, stay aware, stay connected, stay engaged. Let's not just again disconnect ourselves and go back to business as usual. If things are going to shift, if there's going to be adjustments, then it happens by us being involved and staying involved in the process. Um, and so we need to make sure that we're paying attention to the promises that have been made, holding them accountable. We're staying connected, we're staying engaged, We're participating.